You grew up. You got older. You became more responsible, more aware, maybe even more successful. And yet, there are moments when something small triggers something huge inside you. A tone of voice, a door closing, someone not texting back. And suddenly, you're not just reacting to now. You're reacting from a place much older, a place where you once felt scared, ignored, blamed, or not enough. Most people go through life thinking they've moved on from childhood. But the truth is, you don't outgrow what you never fully healed. You just learn to live around it, calling it anxiety, perfectionism, people-pleasing, control. You wear it like armor. You smile through it. You function through it. But deep down, there's a quiet part of you still waiting to be seen, to be held, to be loved differently. And here's the part no one talks about. It's not always the big traumas that leave the deepest wounds. Sometimes, it's the emotional neglect, the silence when you needed words, the pressure to perform when you were falling apart inside. You were taught to be strong, but not supported in your softness. You were told to get over it, but no one stayed long enough to understand what it really was. And now, as an adult, you find yourself reacting, shutting down, overthinking, not because you're broken, but because you were never taught how to feel safe being you. This video isn't here to blame the past. It's here to uncover what's been buried under years of pretending to be okay. It's here to reconnect you with the parts of yourself that were pushed away, shamed, or forgotten. Because your pain is not random. It has a story, a root, a reason, and more importantly, it has a way out. So if you've ever thought, why does this still hurt? If you've ever felt like something is missing, even when everything looks fine, or if you're simply tired of carrying what no longer belongs to you, then stay with me. Because what you're about to hear might not just explain your pain, it might finally set you free. Since childhood, many people heard things like, stop crying, don't be dramatic, or quiet down. Little by little, we start believing that having feelings is wrong. That showing pain is weakness. That feeling too much means there's something wrong with us. So we begin to shut down, not because we want to, but because we think that's what it takes to be loved. Imagine a child who falls, gets hurt, and wants to cry, but hears, you're fine, get up. That hurts more than the fall. That child grows up saying, I'm fine, even when everything inside is falling apart. The body still feels, the heart still aches, but the mouth stays silent. And slowly, pretending becomes a habit, a survival mode. Many people learn to fake being okay. They use humor to hide pain. They change the subject when something feels too deep. But feelings don't disappear just because you ignore them. They stay locked inside, and one day, they show up as anxiety, random anger, emotional exhaustion, or a sadness that has no name. Want to take a first step? Try writing down what you feel. Don't filter it. Don't make it pretty. Just be honest. Ask yourself, what am I hiding from myself today? Or say out loud, I'm tired. I'm sad. Just that, no fixing, no judging, helps your body feel safer. You don't have to explain it to anyone. Just start being real with yourself. Most of us were taught to hide, but there comes a point when your soul wants to be heard. And when you start listening, even a little, you begin to feel lighter. You begin to feel alive. Because behind the pain you've been hiding, there's a part of you just waiting to breathe again. Many children learn early that being good is the only way to feel safe. They keep quiet, follow the rules, smile when they want to cry, and do whatever it takes to avoid disapproval. It's not because they're naturally calm or easygoing. It's because they're scared. Scared of being punished, rejected, or ignored. So they shrink who they are just to feel a tiny bit of love. That survival strategy follows them into adulthood. They become the reliable friend, the hard worker, the one who never complains. They don't say what they really feel because they fear it might push people away. They don't ask for help because they've learned love must be earned through sacrifice. And so they keep giving even when it's silently breaking them inside. The problem is, when you're always trying to be good, you stop being real. You stay quiet when something hurts. You overthink everything before speaking. You do what others expect, not what you truly want. And after a while, you don't even know who you are without the role you're playing. You become a stranger to your own needs, your own voice, your own truth. If this feels familiar, it's time to take a different path. Start by noticing where you're saying yes just to be liked. Practice saying no, even when it's uncomfortable. Give yourself permission to rest without guilt, to feel without fixing, to speak without editing. These small choices are powerful steps toward healing. They remind your nervous system that you are safe just being you. And when you stop performing and finally show up as your full self, something beautiful happens. You begin to attract people who don't need you to shrink. People who see your worth, even in your silence, your flaws, your mess. That's the kind of love you've always deserved. The kind that doesn't ask for perfection, just presence. And that's where the real healing begins. There's a quiet part of many people that's still waiting to be chosen, understood, and loved the way they always needed. Even as adults, they carry the ache of what was missing. Maybe a parent was emotionally distant, or love always came with conditions. That child inside learned to hope, to perform, or to disappear, all in the name of one day being seen. And deep down, that hope never truly left. You might not realize it, but this waiting shows up in subtle ways. Maybe you chase unavailable people, hoping they'll finally give you what your parents didn't. Or maybe you stay in relationships where you're always proving your worth. It's not just about the present, it's about a deep craving for love that feels complete, unconditional, and safe. That craving often leads to patterns that quietly hurt. The hard truth is this: the love you didn't get back then may never come the way you imagined. But here's what's even more true. You don't need to keep waiting. The person you were waiting for might actually be you. When you give yourself the attention, care, and presence you always needed, something begins to heal. That little one inside finally feels held, not abandoned. You can start with simple acts. Speak gently to yourself, especially when you make mistakes. Write letters to your younger self and tell them they were never the problem. Practice looking in the mirror and offering kindness instead of criticism. It may sound small, but these are radical acts of reparenting. It's how you stop waiting and start receiving from the one person who's always been here. And as you begin to fill that inner space with real care, something shifts on the outside too. You stop settling for half love. You stop begging to be seen. You start attracting relationships that mirror the love you've learned to give yourself. Because when you stop waiting to be loved the right way, you finally create the love that feels right. Some children grow up being blamed for things they didn't do, for emotions they didn't cause, for problems they couldn't fix, for pain that wasn't theirs to carry. Maybe a parent yelled and said it was your fault they were stressed. Maybe you were called too sensitive when you were just reacting to chaos. Over time, you start believing, if something goes wrong, it must be me. That belief sinks deep. When this happens often, it shapes your whole identity. You become hyper-aware of everyone's moods. You feel responsible for keeping the peace. You walk on eggshells, constantly wondering what you did wrong. Even when you didn't do anything, you still feel guilty. This guilt becomes a habit, not because you're guilty, but because you were trained to feel that way. As an adult, this pattern plays out in quiet, exhausting ways. You apologize too much. You over-explain. You take on blame to avoid conflict, even when it's not yours. You might even stay in toxic relationships because a part of you believes you deserve the pain. That's what happens when you've spent your life being blamed. You forget where the blame actually belongs. But here's the truth. You were never the cause of someone else's wounds. You were a child. You were reacting, not controlling. Healing starts when you begin separating their pain from your identity. Try writing a list of all the things that weren't your fault, but that you've carried. Say it out loud. That was not mine. Return it to where it belongs. You are not the problem. As you release that false guilt, something powerful begins to open. You start standing taller. You stop over-apologizing. You begin seeing yourself clearly, not as the villain, but as someone who survived confusion and kept their heart intact. And in that clarity, a new strength begins to take shape. For some people, showing pain was never safe. When they cried, they were mocked. When they spoke up, they were punished. When they needed comfort, they were ignored. So they learned quickly, stay quiet, be strong, don't show weakness. Pain became something to hide, not because it didn't hurt, but because showing it only made things worse. And that belief still lingers. As they grew older, this lesson shaped how they lived. They kept things inside. They never asked for help. They smiled through heartbreak, made jokes during breakdowns, and kept moving even when they were falling apart. Being vulnerable felt like a trap. Somewhere deep down, they believed, if I let it out, I'll be hurt again. So they locked it in and threw away the key. But emotions don't just disappear. They transform. Pain that isn't expressed becomes tension in the body, anxiety that doesn't stop, or exhaustion that sleep can't fix. It turns into anger that flares up unexpectedly, or numbness that makes everything feel distant. That strength they were taught? It's not strength at all. It's fear, wrapped in silence, pretending to be control. Healing begins with giving yourself permission to feel again. Start by creating safe spaces, a trusted friend, a journal, or even a quiet moment alone. Let yourself cry without shame. Say what hurts without justifying it. Pain is not weakness. It's proof that you're alive and that you care. And when it's finally heard, it starts to soften, to release, to heal. And the more you honor your pain, the more you reconnect with your truth. You stop living in survival mode. You stop pretending everything's okay when it's not. And slowly, you begin to trust that being real is safer than hiding. Because what once felt dangerous now becomes your doorway to freedom. Some people became caretakers before they even understood what that meant. Maybe they had a sick parent, or one who was emotionally unstable. Maybe they were the peacemaker, the one everyone leaned on. So they learned, my job is to help others, even if I'm hurting. They became strong for everyone, except themselves. And over time, they stopped checking in on their own needs. This pattern becomes hard to break because it looks like love. You show up for others. You listen, support, give your time, your energy, your everything. But quietly, you feel exhausted, resentful, unseen. And that's the painful truth. When your care for others comes at the cost of caring for yourself, it's not love anymore. It's self-abandonment, and it slowly wears you down. You might notice it in little ways. You cancel your rest to help a friend. You say, I'm fine, even when your world is falling apart. You never ask for support because you're the strong one, right? But strength isn't about doing it all alone. Real strength is knowing when you need to receive, not just give. Otherwise, your kindness becomes a cage. Start by asking yourself, when was the last time I truly cared for me? Not just a break or a snack, but something that nourished your soul. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's saying no without guilt. Maybe it's finally letting someone else show up for you. You matter too. Your needs aren't selfish. They're sacred. And when you begin giving to yourself what you've always given to others, something shifts. You begin to feel balanced, whole, alive. The love you offer others starts to feel real again, because it's not coming from a place of depletion. It's coming from overflow, and that changes everything. Some people become experts at looking okay when they're not. They know how to smile through pain, laugh in the middle of anxiety, and say, I'm good, with tears behind their eyes. It's not because they're fake, it's because they had to be. Life taught them that breaking down wasn't an option, so they built a mask, wore it every day, and eventually forgot where the mask ended and they began. This mask becomes so convincing that even they start believing it. They stay busy. They help others. They keep things light. But when they're finally alone, it hits them. The sadness, the pressure, the emptiness. That moment in the shower, in the car, late at night, when the truth comes crashing in. And yet the next day, they put the mask back on like nothing happened. Living this way is exhausting. You feel like no one really knows you, because no one's allowed to see past the performance. And the more you pretend, the more isolated you feel. It's a quiet kind of suffering. To be surrounded by people, yet feel completely alone. To be praised for your strength, when inside, you're breaking. Healing starts by telling the truth, even if it's just to yourself. Start with one honest sentence a day. Tell a friend, I'm struggling, without trying to explain it away. Let someone in. Cry without saying sorry. You don't need to be strong all the time. In fact, being real is one of the strongest things you can do. And once you taste what it's like to be seen, truly seen, without the mask, it's hard to go back. Because real connection doesn't come from pretending. It comes from honesty. And when someone loves the real you, not the version you perform, that's when healing becomes possible. Some people grew up feeling invisible, not because they weren't present, but because no one truly noticed them. They were labeled the smart one, the quiet one, the difficult one. But those labels were too small for who they really were. They had dreams, emotions, questions, creativity, but no one asked. No one looked deeper. So they learned to hide what was real to fit what was expected. Over time, this disconnect creates a deep ache. You start to wonder, do people actually know me? You may feel lonely even in a room full of people. You show certain sides of yourself that feel safe, but keep the rest locked away. And when someone finally says, "I see you," it hits a part of your heart that forgot it existed, because being unseen is one of the quietest forms of pain. When you're not seen for who you are, you start changing to match what others want. You become the version that gets approval. You shrink your light so others feel comfortable. You downplay your weirdness, your passion, your truth, just to belong. But inside, there's this part of you that's screaming, "I just want to be me and still be loved." To shift this, you need to start by seeing yourself. Stop waiting for others to notice. Ask, what do I love that I've been hiding? What part of me have I silenced to fit in? Start showing up with more honesty, even in small ways. Share a truth. Wear what you love. Let someone hear the part of you you've kept quiet. That's where reconnection begins. And when you start living as the real you, not the version shaped by other people's expectations, something powerful happens. You begin to feel whole, alive, home in your own skin. And slowly, the world starts reflecting that truth back to you. When life felt chaotic or unpredictable, many people found comfort in control. They organized everything, planned ahead, stayed alert. Control became a shield, a way to feel less vulnerable. Because deep down, they believed, if I can manage every detail, I won't get hurt. It wasn't about being strict. It was about trying to feel safe in a world that never felt stable. But control can be exhausting. You overthink every decision. You prepare for things that may never happen. You struggle to relax because rest feels like a risk. Even joy can be scary because it's not something you can hold on to. So instead of living, you manage. And in trying so hard to protect yourself, you start missing the very life you wanted to feel safe in. The truth is, control doesn't equal safety. It equals tension. Real safety comes from something softer. Trust. Trust in yourself, in your ability to handle what comes. Trust that not everything has to be predicted, that you can live without knowing all the answers. It's not easy, especially if chaos once hurt you, but it's possible, one step at a time. Start with small moments. Let the plan be flexible. Try something new without preparing for every outcome. Sit in uncertainty without rushing to fix it. It's scary at first, but it teaches your body something new, that not everything unknown is dangerous. And the more you release control, the more you create space for real peace. Because when you stop gripping so tightly, life starts to meet you in gentler ways. You begin to breathe, to trust, to open. And slowly, you learn that safety was never in the control. It was always in the connection you build with yourself. There are moments when something small happens, and suddenly you feel 10 years old again. Someone raises their voice, and you freeze. Someone ignores you, and you feel invisible. These aren't random reactions. They're echoes. Echoes of moments when your nervous system learned, this is dangerous, even if it isn't now. You may be grown, but part of you is still that child who never felt safe. This inner child doesn't live in your past. It lives in your body, your reactions, your fears. You try to stay calm, but your heart races. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, but your chest tightens. Logic can't explain it away, because the wound isn't logical. It's emotional, and until it's seen, it keeps repeating. Not to punish you, but to get your attention. You're not broken for reacting this way. You're not weak. You're responding with the tools you had back then, and you survived the best way you could. But now, you have new tools. You can pause. You can breathe. You can remind yourself, I'm not a child anymore. I'm safe now. That's not pretending. That's reparenting. Try this. The next time a big emotion rises fast, pause and ask, how old do I feel right now? You might be surprised at the answer. Talk to that version of you. Reassure them. Let them know they don't have to handle it alone anymore. This simple practice can bring huge shifts in how you respond and how you heal. Because the more you respond with compassion instead of shame, the more that inner child begins to trust again. And when they feel safe, You feel whole. You stop reacting to the past and begin choosing your present. Many people grew up believing love wasn't something freely given. It had to be earned through achievements, good behavior, helpfulness, or silence. If you got praised, you felt worthy. If you messed up, you felt invisible or punished. Love became a prize, not a right. And so, you kept trying, doing more, being better, hoping one day it would finally feel like enough. This belief doesn't just disappear with age. It follows you into relationships, friendships, work. You overextend yourself. You try to be perfect. You feel anxious when things are calm because peace feels unfamiliar. Deep down, you still think, if I stop performing, I'll lose their love. So you keep performing, even when it's silently destroying your spirit. But love that needs to be earned isn't love. It's a transaction. Real love doesn't require constant effort just to be kept. You don't need to sacrifice yourself to be chosen. You don't have to become smaller, quieter, or more useful to be loved. You're allowed to exist, as you are, and still be worthy of care, presence, and warmth. To begin changing this, notice where you're overworking for affection. Pay attention to moments when you feel like you have to prove something to be valued. Gently ask, what if I stopped trying so hard? Would love still stay? Practice giving love to yourself in small, steady ways. Write affirmations. Rest without guilt. Let someone love you even when you're not impressive. And the more you trust that your worth doesn't depend on performance, the more you attract people who see the real you, not just the version you worked so hard to build. That's when love starts to feel safe, not earned, not borrowed, but real. Children are like sponges. They absorb more than words. They feel energy, silence, tone of voice. So if a parent was angry, cold, anxious, or depressed, the child didn't just notice, they felt responsible. They thought, maybe I'm the reason they're sad. It didn't matter if no one said it directly. The child still carried that weight, not because it was theirs, but because no one told them it wasn't. As they grow up, this unspoken pain stays. It becomes the voice in their head that says, you're not enough, or don't make things worse. It shapes their relationships. They choose people who mirror that old pain. They work too hard to fix what's broken, and they don't even realize they're not living their story. They're carrying wounds that were never theirs to begin with. This inheritance isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Maybe your parents did the best they could. Maybe they didn't. But their pain should not become your identity. You are not responsible for their healing, their regrets, or their limitations. You have your own life to live, your own healing to do. And that begins when you stop holding what was never yours. To release this, try naming what you've carried that came from them, their fears, their beliefs, their silence. Then ask yourself, does this belong to me? Say it out loud if you can. I let this go. I return it. It may sound simple, but these rituals have power. They begin to separate your truth from the story you inherited. And as you put that old pain down, something beautiful begins to rise. Your voice, your desires, your freedom. You start living your life from a place of truth, not repetition. And that's how generational cycles start to break, not with blame, but with bravery. Some people never experienced what it feels like to simply exist and be accepted. They always had to adjust. Their tone, their behavior, their feelings. If they were too loud, they were scolded. Too quiet, they were ignored. Too emotional, they were shamed. So they learned, I have to be careful all the time. And little by little, being themselves didn't feel safe anymore. When you never feel fully safe, you live in a state of constant tension. You scan the room for danger. You second-guess every word. You try to predict how others might react. Even in moments of peace, your body stays on high alert because safety was never consistent, and that nervous system remembers. It protects you, even when the threat is long gone. Living like this is exhausting. It keeps you from relaxing, from trusting, from connecting. You feel tired even when you haven't done much. You might call yourself too sensitive or dramatic, but really, you're just carrying years of survival in your bones. And no one ever taught you how to feel safe, not with others and not with yourself. Healing starts by creating that safety now. Find spaces where you don't have to shrink. Speak with people who make you feel calm, not tense. Practice feeling safe in your own body, through breath, gentle movement, or quiet time. Tell yourself, it's okay to be me. Do it daily. These small moments send new messages to your system, messages of peace. Because the truth is, safety isn't just a place, it's a feeling. And the more you learn to give it to yourself, the more your world starts to feel different. You begin to trust again, to breathe deeper, and to believe, maybe for the first time, that you are safe to exist exactly as you are. Many people were taught not to make a big deal out of their pain. If they cried, someone said, "Other people have it worse." If they struggled, they heard, "Be grateful for what you have." So they learned to silence their hurt, to downplay their wounds, to smile when they were breaking inside. And little by little, they believed the lie, "My pain doesn't matter." But pain isn't a competition. You don't need to suffer the most to deserve care. Just because someone else had it harder doesn't mean you didn't hurt. Both can be true. You can be grateful and still in pain. You can be strong and still need support. Minimizing your emotions doesn't heal them. It just buries them deeper. This pattern shows up in subtle ways. You say, "I'm fine," when you're not. You dismiss your struggles with a joke. You comfort others while ignoring your own needs. You become great at showing up for everyone, except yourself. And slowly, that quiet habit of minimizing becomes your way of surviving, but not of healing. Try this instead. When pain comes up, don't compare it. Just listen. Sit with it. Write it down. Say, "This matters," even if no one else sees it. Practice validating your own experience. Talk to yourself like you would to a child who's hurting. Would you ever say to them, "That's nothing"? Then don't say it to yourself, because the truth is, your pain doesn't have to be the worst to deserve attention. It just has to be real. And the moment you stop judging your wounds and start honoring them, that's the moment they begin to heal. Some wounds don't show up right away. They hide beneath routines, relationships, and responsibilities. For years, you might think everything is fine, but then something happens. A breakup, a betrayal, a loss, and suddenly the pain rushes in. Not just from the moment, but from years ago. That's the moment you realize, this isn't just about now. This has been with me for a long time. It can be confusing. You wonder, why am I reacting so strongly? You might feel ashamed for being too emotional or too sensitive. But what's really happening is your nervous system recognizing an old wound. Life didn't create the pain, it revealed it. And though it hurts, that awareness is actually the beginning of healing. You can't heal what you don't know is there. For many people, that trigger becomes a turning point. They start asking deeper questions. They reflect on their childhood, their patterns, their silence. They realize they've been carrying pain they never acknowledged, and that it's okay to feel it now. The trigger wasn't the problem. It was the messenger, the call to finally go inward. So when pain rises unexpectedly, don't push it away. Sit with it. Ask, where have I felt this before? Trace it back, gently. Give that younger version of you the attention they never had. That doesn't mean drowning in the past. It means honoring it. Because every time you give that pain a voice, you take one step closer to peace. And from that moment on, your story starts to shift. You stop seeing triggers as enemies. You start seeing them as invitations to grow, to release, to come home to yourself. And that awareness changes everything. Now that you've heard all this, stop and ask yourself, how long have you been carrying wounds that weren't yours to carry? How many times have you apologized for simply feeling? How often have you abandoned yourself just to be accepted by others? And most of all, how much longer are you willing to live this way? Your healing doesn't begin when life gets easier. It begins the moment you stop hiding your truth. The moment you look at that younger version of yourself and say, "I see you now." You don't need to be fixed. You need to be felt. And no matter how long it's been, it's never too late to come home to yourself. So here's your invitation. Take one truth from this video and apply it today, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient. Today, write to your inner child. Set a boundary. Say what you really feel. Whatever it is, do something that honors the part of you that was never allowed to speak. And tell me, which part of this video hit you the hardest? What wound did you recognize? What part of you are you finally ready to stop hiding? Leave it in the comments, not just for you, but for someone else who might need to see they're not alone. And if this video brought something real to the surface, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, because this journey of healing doesn't end here. It's just beginning. And I'll be here with you every step of the way.